Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
All right, got it. Trust no one. Goodbye. Oh, hey there, fellow truth seekers. BH McG here. I just got off the phone with my guy from New Mexico who clued me in on the latest global conspiracy. And folks, I can't say too much here over the YouTube waves, but you should know you should have an extra week's worth of socks on hand just to be safe, okay? But no matter what the lizard people have in store for us, you can always keep your online information safe with Surfshark VPN. The click of a mouse or the tap of your phone can keep all your private info safe on the open internet. No more having to worry about hackers, doxing, or identity theft. Take it from me, folks. Before Surfshark, my ID got stolen a whole bunch of times. It usually got returned the next day with no harm done to it out of pity, but it's still scary. Get this and dozens of other benefits by downloading Surfshark. Get it at the link in the description, then use the code REGRET to get 83% off your order, plus an extra 3 months for free. A safe internet with no limits. Exactly what the lizard folk don't want you to have. Tell them to stick it with Surfshark VPN. Remember, folks, stay alert and keep your gimmick of preference handy. Hello? The Mauve, is that you? Hey everybody, this week we are taking a step back from the invasion storyline, give that a bit of moment to breathe so we can talk about something else that's not going to be WWE in 2001 related. This week I'm looking at WCW Spring Stampede 1997 from April 6th at the Tupelo Coliseum in Tupelo, Mississippi. This show was nominated by Corey Peters, Fergus Jeffs, Jeremy Russell, and Mysterio99 over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. Now 97 was a great year for WCW. Arguably its best and most successful, but this show was a real test for the remaining star power on the card because this show does not have its world champion, Hollywood Hogan. Ric Flair is here but is not wrestling. There's no Piper, there's no Scott Hall, and there's no Sting, who's been making some appearances now and then but is still far away from Starrcade. But the Dungeon of Doom is here, so we'll find out how the show did. At Uncensored last month, the NWO won a big faction war against Team WCW and Team Piper, which I guess operated independently from the rest of WCW. Each team would have gotten something had they won, and in the NWO's case, they had the right to challenge for any championship in the future. But meanwhile, there are signs that the NWO is beginning to show some cracks in the foundation. Eric Bischoff was recently kayfabe suspended for his flagrant abuse of power regarding the WCW tag titles and the Steiner brothers. Factions within the group start to form, and most notably, one half of the tag champ, Scott Hall, is just MIA for weeks as he deals with his drug and alcohol abuse problems, but at least at this point, it's not part of the storyline. All the tagline here, these men do solemnly swear to kick, fight, punch, stomp, and flatten anybody who gets in their way. I also love the promotional ads for this pay-per-view, like the Wild West gimmick with the four horsemen like dressed as cowboys and riding horseback.
The horsemen gotta get reunited. We got a bigger mission in front of us.
It's just weird to see guys like Chris Benoit and Mongo McMichael dressed in like Old West attire and everything. It's also kind of a sad irony with these spots because this incarnation of the four horsemen technically isn't really accurate at this point when they're airing these things for reasons I'll get into, and just a couple months from here it's going to be even more inaccurate. 8,300 people in the Tupelo Coliseum, 210,000 buys leads to a .58 buy rate. Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Dusty Rhodes on commentary. They announced that Scott Hall is still not there and Nash must defend the tag titles by himself with no substitutions. More on that later. First match sees Ultimo/Ultimate Dragon, depending on what graphic you look at, versus Rey Mysterio Jr. Can you say instant highlight reel? Mike Tenay joins the team for this match, starts out with a feeling out process, kind of slow going at first until Dragon hits a beautiful spinning backbreaker out of nowhere, a powerbomb into sort of a stun gun maneuver on the ropes. Ultimo with an insane running powerbomb from corner to corner and a tombstone, but Dragon then pulls Rey up. Ultimo just toying with Mysterio for several minutes, pulls out the surfboard, that's always a great move. Rey breaks out of a sleeper, gets his own locked in, and the crowd pops huge for it. They were waiting for him to finally do something, starts a big comeback here. Mid-match, we go backstage to Lee Marshall trying to get an update on Kevin Nash's demands for the tag title match. He just gets 6 at the door instead. Ray goes up top, but Dragon drop kicks him off. Some cool maneuvering in this match. Dragon with a cool dive after skinning the cat. Ray goes for a moonsault off the ropes, but Dragon intercepts him with a drop kick, pulls off the giant swing. A beautiful sequence leads to a pair of kickouts, some more exciting roll-ups. Mysterio vaults off the ropes, hits the Frankensteiner, the pin. Ray wins. I give it 4 stars out of 5. A very fun, exciting match. It's very emblematic of like WCW's format, kicking things off with the cruiserweights. It works to perfection here. I like the slow going beginning, how it just keeps ramping up until we get this big exciting back and forth between the two of them. The crowd is just completely ballistic for it by the end. So yeah, it's very well done by both guys. Some good lucha things, you might say. Lee Marshall backstage again trying to talk to Kevin Nash. Suddenly the Steiners show up and they both want a piece. As security breaks it up, Nash pops out and demands the NWO ref Nick Patrick be assigned to the tag title match. Suddenly Scotty swings at somebody and Doug Dillinger just maces the hell out of him and they cuff him on the floor. And Scotty's selling it's really scary here. The way he is screaming and just this complete pain over the burning in his eyes. He's screaming for his brother to help him, but Rick is pinned up against the wall by security. Up next for the very short-lived WCW Women's Championship, you have Akira Hokuto defending against Madusa. Hokuto is the first ever women's champion. She beat Madusa at Starrcade 96 in the tournament finals and accompanied by Iowa's favorite son, Sonny Ono. Hokuto gets to work right away on Madusa, but Mads comes back with some quick lefts and rights. Akira back on top and seems to have an answer for everything until Madusa hits a few big takedowns. Sonny with some cheap shots on Madusa in the ropes, one of which is right in front of the referee until he gets kicked away. Madusa with a pair of missile drop kicks, a bridging German, but Akira kicks out. Ono's launched off the apron. Madusa goes for a powerbomb, but then she's attacked by a debuting Luna Vachon. Hokuto with the roll-up and the win to retain. It was an okay match, some pretty good stuff here on display, but I think it was a bit too short. Only about 5 minutes long. Really too short for these two to really get anything going and show what either of them can do. And the story really here is, again, the debuting Luna and how that's going to play in to what Madusa is doing. Akira would hold on to this belt for a little while longer, but she would vacate it in July. There was one other women's champion, again, not Madusa, before the title is eventually just totally retired. It's kind of crazy they brought Madusa in with this promise of, oh, there's going to be a women's division and a championship. And I would imagine she was told at some point she would eventually become the champion, but that just absolutely never materialized. She lost the tournament finals at 96, and then she loses here against Akira, and then when it's time for the title to be vacated, she still doesn't get it, and then she just has to linger around for a while until she wins the Cruiserweight Championship in 2000. World Television Championship matchup next as Prince Iaukea defends against the man he beat for the belt, Lord Steven Regal. He beat Regal back in February to become the champion, and just 2 weeks ago on Nitro, Iaukea has been getting kind of a nice rub here as champion here. 2 weeks ago on Nitro, he wrestled Randy Savage in a non-title match, which just sounds like universe mode gone awry. Some locking up and posturing early on. Regal's taken down early and seems frustrated. The announcers mention that Scott Steiner was arrested for assaulting a police officer, which is absolutely not true. He hit a security guard, which is a completely different level of authority figure. So anyway, Scott is arrested and now he will not be in the tag title match. And they announced during this matchup that the tag title match is going to be Kevin Nash versus Rick Steiner in a singles match to determine the tag team championships. There you go. Many headlock takeovers by the Prince. Regal begins to take over after he pushes Iaukea into the ropes, hits some big stomps. Prince Iaukea comes back with a springboard crossbody and things slow back down between them with a test of strength. Regal on top for several minutes. The two exchange strikes and Prince begins to make his comeback. Regal begs off, but only for a moment. Iaukea goes for a dive, but Regal just nopes him. Prince comes back once again, but this time it sticks. A pretty creative finish where Regal goes for a roll-up, but Iaukea spins out of it and pins to win and retain. Right after the bell, Regal's a sore loser and jumps Iaukea and puts him in the Regal stretch and everything. Very reminiscent of what Regal's been doing the last couple of weeks on TV. The match was okay. I think the chemistry between Regal and Iaukea wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to keep my interest for most of this matchup here. I would just call this match just right down the middle for me in terms of quality. Mean Gene plugs the hotline, then brings out Ric Flair. He talks about how the Horsemen are all doing great. He announces his return to the ring from injury coming up in a couple of weeks in Charlotte. Puts over Mongo and Benoit and Jarrett and Arn Anderson as well. well, who just days earlier underwent neck surgery for the injury that ultimately ended his wrestling career. In fact, on the Nitro after Uncensored, Arn made a big speech for the crowd, basically saying he had this neck injury, he was suffering paralysis and numbness in his hand, which is why he was going to be off for a while, but he said he would be back. But sadly, he would not be back in a full-time wrestling capacity ever after this. But it is good to see, has a happy ending. He still got work, he still has been gainfully employed ever since, and does occasionally get to bump and give bumps to people from time to time. Back to the promo, Flair puts over his friend Roddy Piper, brings up football player Kevin Green, who was recently released by the Carolina Panthers. He invites him to come wrestle at Slamboree, and that's apparently all it takes. He wraps it up by talking about Hollywood Hogan, challenging him to a match on that Charlotte show in a couple weeks. Also, he mentions he wants to beat up Eric Bischoff with both hands tied behind his back and his legs tied together before he retires. Woo! Up next, the Public Enemy take on Jeff Jarrett and Steve Mongo McMichael, the Four Horsemen. And folks, I've been covering this angle between Jarrett and Mongo all wrong from the beginning. It's completely out of order, and now I don't even know what's going on anymore, so I apologize, because we saw the beginnings of it at Sold Out. We saw the disappointing end of the feud when Jarrett left the company to go with the Federation, and Mongo wrestled Alex Wright out of the blue instead. But here's a nice middle chunk of the feud. Now, Jarrett's being accompanied by Deborah McMichael more and more, who is Mongo's wife at this point, and Mongo begins to get jealous of it, and also Mongo feels like he's been suffering for Jarrett's chicanery in the last several weeks. Rocco Rock gets into it with Mongo. He and Johnny Grunge taunt him a little bit until Mongo hits a couple of chop blocks. They chase Public Enemy out and do some strutting. Jarrett and Mongo do a bit of cheating, but the fans dig it because they're horsemen and they're also not Public Enemy. Grunge causes an accidental collision between the horsemen, but Jarrett and Mongo recover, still on top of Rocco. Steve with a tilt-a-whirl slam. Jarrett and Grunge fight on the outside, Mongo with Rocco, and we get the return of the dual screens. Mongo and Rock knock over some fake cows, and Heenan makes a Blazing Saddles reference.
Mongo knocked out that big steer. He just knocked out two of them again. Yeah. He really did. Yeah. That's a good point. I can't wait for the campfire.
Grunge with the elbow off the top through a table on the floor. Shivani asks if anyone remembers who the legal men are. Heenan asks, does it matter? Dusty says, we got a dead cow here, brother. Deborah trips up Rock and brings in the dreaded Halliburton. Jarrett's tagged in. He's a house of fire. Rocco grabs the briefcase, decks Jarrett with it while the ref and Mongo are distracted. The cover, Public Enemy steal one, and the Horsemen just can't get it figured out. I give it 1 star out of 5. It's not one of the better showings on this event. It's a pretty simple match. There's a little bit of wrestling, a lot of gaga, and then there's a cheap finish at the end. Mean Gene backstage, plugging the hotline yet again, and then Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry show up, and this is that promo. You know the one.
And after we take Lex Luger and the Giant, we want the gold, sucker. Hulk Hogan, we coming for you, sucker.
What an edit. I love how they fixed that in the network. Good job, folks. This is easily the most quoted Booker T promo of all time, but there's more to it than just the soundbite you've heard for years and years. It begins with Sister Sherry talks about how the plan for the Four Corners match is in motion. Booker says they take what they want, tells Hogan they're coming for him, and after he says it and drops the N-bomb, first, I love the body language of Booker T, where he realizes the word is escaping his lips and he can't stop it. And then when it finally does, you can see him go, oh, I can't believe I screwed this up, and you can see he feels really bad for himself. But Mean Gene does not miss a fucking beat and just goes right on to talk to Stevie Ray, how he says it's not time for rumpa room, sucker. As Booker T slowly regains his composure, they're taking out Lex Luger and the Giant tonight. As I said, it's an infamous, immortal promo for what Booker T said here. A lot of people asked me over the years if, this promo should have gone in my awesomely bad promos countdown I did several years ago. And the answer is no, because it's not a bad promo. I mean, if you took out Booker T dropping the N-bomb on Hulk Hogan and everything else were the same, it's a fine promo. I like the intensity from both of them. Sister Sherry kind of ties everything together. And I mean, yeah, it'd be forgettable. I mean, if the N-bomb didn't happen, the next day you probably forget about this promo, but it's not a bad promo. It's really well done, except for Booker T's slip-up. Well, here comes the workhorse match as Dean Malenko defends the U.S. title against Chris Benoit. Benoit is accompanied by Woman, and it gets kind of awkward here. Kind of hard to tap dance around, because usually when I review Benoit matches, they don't take place during this time period, and it's easier for me to try and remain objective and just kind of talk about Benoit and observe him for what he did in these moments. It's harder, though, to compartmentalize that when we're thick in the angle here with Benoit and Kevin Sullivan, where Sullivan, as has been said, famously booked his own divorce by booking the fact that he and woman Nancy Sullivan they were breaking off, and she went to Benoit for support, and Sullivan had Benoit and Nancy travel the road together, and then that turned into them having an affair and being in a relationship, and that was what began their whole courtship, leading to them being married and everything from here. So, it's just weird that we're seeing this play out in 97 as I'm watching this back. Like, you know where it's going to go. Sorry for making it awkward, though, but I had to talk about it. Meanwhile, Dean Malenko beat Eddie Guerrero for the U.S. title at Uncensored last month and has issued a challenge to Benoit for the title out of respect for him as a competitor. Begins with some graps and trading some arm drags, exchanging some submissions on each other at the same time. Dean fights out of a hold and suplexes Benoit. Benoit with some chops, but Malenko's aggressive as well. Begins to stretch Benoit in the middle of the ring with various holds. Malenko with a short arm scissors applied, but Benoit just deadlifts him up and down that arm. Benoit's got Malenko on an abdominal stretch, keeps the beating going. Some more chops. Malenko goes for a suplex, and Benoit reverses it into a reverse suplex. Wow. Out comes Jacqueline of the Dungeon of Doom, who comes right after woman. They're fighting as Jimmy Hart shows up. Benoit hits the flying headbutt. Jimmy steals the belt. Eddie Guerrero with his arm in a sling shows up and stops Jimmy. Malenko suplexes Benoit. They both go out of the ring. As all this madness goes on, Arn Anderson shows up, decks Malenko, throws him back into the ring. Kevin Sullivan then shows up. Sullivan respectfully leaves Arn alone, decks Benoit with a pool cue or something. The ref finally rings the bell and the match is thrown out. Suddenly the Dungeon grab Guerrero and put the belt on him, but Eddie seems to want nothing to do with them here. He's not related to the Dungeon of Doom. Malenko helps revive Benoit and snaps awake. Malenko seems to say something to the effect of he was not supposed to be here, and they agree. Shivani screaming, "Who are they talking about?" I don't know, maybe one of the 8 people who ran in at the end of this match? I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I would have ranked it a bit higher, but I mean, the finish was just so dumb and convoluted and just crazy that I had to dock it a half star because it was just so bad. Like, think back to the last Benoit WCW match I reviewed, Starrcade 95. That finish was dumb and also involved Jimmy Hart and Kevin Sullivan, now that I think about it, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what we saw here. Basically, just a long way to go in the Dungeon of Doom, costing Benoit the match. But everything before that point, where everyone runs in, was really good. Time now for that Tag Team Championship match as Kevin Nash, by himself, defends against Rick Steiner by himself. You heard me. We saw the build-up to this. Both Scotts are gone. Hall's dealing with his personal demons, and Scott Steiner was written out earlier in the show. So let's see what happens before. How do we get to this point, though? Because it sold out earlier in the year. The Steiners managed to beat the Outsiders on their home turf to win the belts, but Eric Bischoff stripped them on a technicality and gave them back to Nash and Hall. Bischoff is eventually suspended for his flagrant abuse of power, and like I mentioned, for the last several weeks, Scott Hall is gone. There's confusion as to where he is, and there's confusion as to who's really in charge in the NWO, it seems. There does seem to be a power struggle, and we start to begin to see like the beginnings of what becomes the Wolfpack forming at this point in time. But the biggest confusion to me is why Kevin Nash isn't allowed to have a replacement partner. Like, Six hangs out with him all the time. Why is he not there? So he can't have a substitute. It's not a handicap match. It's just a singles match. Again, Nash and Steiner for the Tag Team Championships. What? So Nash can't have a new tag team partner, but he can have cornermen apparently, because he's accompanied by Six, Ted DiBiase, and referee Nick Kenny Powers Patrick. I love how sleazy Patrick looks here as the NWO referee. Also, his taped up hand kind of looks like a Mickey Mouse glove, which is weird. Rick Steiner comes to the ring and both guys come out swinging. Nash attacks Rick in the corner, but Rick comes back with a suplex. Six pulls the top rope and Steiner tumbles out of the ring in full view of Nick Patrick, and Nash takes over. DiBiase gets a shot in from the outside. I love the big boot by Nash here. It looks really snug. Nash with the jackknife, but Rick kicks out. That's a shocker. Rick hits the low blow on Nash, and Nick Patrick gives a mighty finger wag for it. Nick's body language here is really great. A top rope bulldog by Rick. Nash kicks out at 3.1, but Patrick calls it a 2. Six takes forever to remove a turnbuckle pad. Even Ted DiBiase gets up to try and help him. Why would they not gimmick the pad so it was easier to remove? Nash drops Rick face first into the exposed bolt multiple times. DiBiase tells Nash to stop. Enough's enough. DiBiase just ups and walks away from the NWO here. Even Patrick looks to be upset and uncomfortable at what Nash is doing, going over the line here. A couple more snake eyes into the corner, one more jackknife. Nick reluctantly makes a 3 count, then he leaves in a hurry. I give it 1 star out of 5. You know, I dig the story they're telling here where there's cracks shown in the NWO foundation, like I mentioned, and how we're kind of, again, building slowly toward the formation of the Wolfpack. But this match here is just really, it's so questionable. It's just so, like, so many head-scratching decisions here. Why they had to write out Scott Steiner for this? I mean, I get having to write around Scott Hall being gone. Like, I can understand them having difficulties with that, but there's so many other ways you could have done this to make it work and have it make sense and not have 2 singles guys wrestle for tag belts. And again, the spot where they're trying and failing to get the turnbuckle pad off is just laughable to me. Mean Gene backstage with Lex Luger and the Giant speaking soft and smooth like he's telling you a secret.
I have some definite thoughts on this match, and I know from the very beginning this is Hulk Hogan's plan.
Big babyface promo by the Giant here saying the best man will win and deserves a shot against Hollywood Hogan. Lex Luger says it's all about taking down the NWO, who have made everyone sick with their actions for the last year. They want to bring prestige back to the WCW name, and we go to that match now. It's a 4 corners match to see who will get the first shot at Hollywood Hogan for the championship at a future date. You've got Lex Luger, the Giant, Booker T, and Stevie Ray. I mean, it looks like a tag team match here. It's really what it is, but they book it as this 4 corners match. Anyone could be anyone. There's no friends here, but that's absolutely not how it plays out. We start with Luger and Booker, the total package showing off the strength early with a press slam. We get the face-off with Stevie Ray and the Giant. Giant throws his weight around against both members of Harlem Heat. We finally get Giant and Luger as the 2 legal men, so they have to fight each other. Luger goes for the body slam, but Giant's too big. The 2 tag in Booker and Stevie, and the crowd loves it, but they just do a basic drop down and a leapfrog, just kind of like celebrate and show off. Then Booker tags in Luger, goes back to being a regular tag team match, basically. Harlem Heat work over the Giant for several minutes until he fights back and tags in Luger. Lex takes a lot of heat from the Huffman brothers. They go for the rocket launcher, but Luger moves. Hot tag to the Giant. He's all over them. Signals to choke slam Stevie Ray, but instead he walks over to Luger and tells him to tag in, letting Luger put Stevie in the torture rack for the win, the sacrifice for the greater good, even though we just said, may the best man win. I give it 2 stars out of 5. Like, it's a decent tag team match, you know, with a weird break in the middle where the partners have to fight each other for a second and then that just goes away and is never mentioned again. But besides that, I mean, I wouldn't call it a very good 4 corners match. Harlem Heat being in this match makes no sense because they are a solidified, bona fide tag team at this point. Booker T is still miles away from being like a real single star at this point. So for them, all 4 of them to be in this thing, Harlem Heat didn't belong in this one, honestly. It's just everything I didn't like about the triangle match at Starrcade 95, but now instead of 1 extra person, it's 2 extra people. Honestly, whoever decided to take tags out of multi-man matches deserves a medal because that makes the matches, to me, a lot more interesting. As far as the fallout from this, you know, Lex Luger, he gets that title shot against Hogan. He would beat Hollywood Hogan on Nitro to become the new champion. It's one of the biggest moments in Nitro history. Unfortunately, he would lose the belt maybe 1.5 or less than 2 weeks later back to Hogan at Road Wild.
I'm gonna moiter the ball.
In your main event, it's a grudge match, no DQ, as Diamond Dallas Page takes on Randy Savage. DDP famously rejected the NWO's invitation to join earlier in the year. Then at Uncensored, Savage took things too far with Page, even assaulting DDP's wife Kimberly, which this is how it was established, or it was learned, that Kimberly, the Diamond Doll, and DDP were actually a married couple, was when they assaulted Kimberly out on the stage and spray painted NWO on her. Savage and Liz make their entrance. Then we hear from DDP, who says Savage has stepped over the line. Kimberly says the odds are against Page, but that rage is a powerful motivator. Michael Buffer with the introductions here. A little game of cat and mouse soon turns into a brawl. DDP with an interesting drop in the ring. Goes the Diamond Cutter early on, but it's blocked. Fighting in the crowd. Page dinks Randy with trash cans. Savage grabs Kim, and that allows Elizabeth to rake Page's back. Savage takes over and beats his opponent down the outside. Heels on Buffer and David Penzer as he takes some chairs, but it backfires. Back and forth in the ring. Randy with a big clothesline, but Page with one of his own. Savage heels on Penzer again and grabs the ring bell. Shades of WrestleMania 3. He's got evil intentions, but Kim takes the bell. Savage comes down with the flying nothing, but Page puts up the legs. Diamond Cutter attempt turns into Dick Kick City. Randy does not like the 2 count, so he beats the shit out of referee Mark Curtis. Big pile driver, then he whips him with his own belt. Savage with a perfect diving elbow, but there's no ref to make the count. Who could have foreseen that? In comes Kenny Powers as a smiling Kevin Nash looks on from the stage. DDP with his favorite move on the planet, the diamond cutter. Shoulders back, chest out. There's the cover. Patrick surprisingly makes the 3 count without too much hesitation. DDP wins. Nash is now furious and attacks Patrick. Then in come the rest of the NWO. There's Eric Bischoff, Six, Vincent, Fake Sting, even Ted DiBiase's back. Poor Nick Patrick takes the jackknife, and now Savage has his hands on Kim. Bischoff actually stops Randy, telling him to check himself, and stops him from striking Kim. Fans are chanting, looking for Sting, but he's not there. Savage beats up Bischoff. What is happening with the NWO? I give it 3.5 stars. It's a pretty solid match here with these two. They have great chemistry here. It's not as good of a match, I think, as their one they have a Great American Bash or Halloween Havoc, for example, but this is still a strong match nonetheless. I think it tells a good story and really helps legitimize DDP in a major way in the eyes of fans for him to get that win over Savage, again, to help legitimize him as a top-tier guy in WCW. My grade for Spring Stampede 1997 is a C+. I think the show starts strong with the Cruiserweights, ends strong with Savage and DDP, and the match with Benoit and Malenko is really good except for that horrific ending. So I think those are the bright points of this show, but there are just a few too many head-scratching moments in terms of creative decisions on this show for my liking, like that finish, for example, or how they tried to rework the tag title match as well. I think, the show was missing a lot of star power for a variety of reasons. And I think, all things considered, this show did a pretty good job kind of carrying the load in their absence, but I don't think it was an amazing job, but it wasn't a terrible job either. But what did you think of Spring Stampede 97? Let me know in the comment section below. And as for our next time, 2 weeks from now on the Classic Reviews segment, we are going back to the Invasion storyline, going back to WWF in the year 2001. The Invasion's come and gone, the Alliance has planted their flag, and now it's time for a continuation with SummerSlam 2001. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.